Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 18 of the Nosebleeds section podcast. My name is Nick, alongside my co-host Thomas. We have made it to 18 episodes. I know 18 really does not seem like that much. We're trying to do 2 every week. Honestly, it's a lot of it based on what comes out. A lot really hasn't come out this week. It's really only been a kind of one, I would say, kind of not big, but pretty decent sized news article involving Saints number one running back, Alvin Kamara. He supposedly, it's been reported that he has not shown up up until today, previously the last 3 workouts they had. He showed up today, and this is apparently in connection with his contract talks with the Saints, and a lot of people weren't sure if maybe he was trying to force the contract or force the trade. Apparently, he returned today, and the Saints and Kamara are working on a long-term deal. It is not confirmed, obviously, and other sources have come out saying that the Saints were interested in looking into trading Alvin Kamara. Now, give me your thoughts on, is it worth it for the Saints to trade Alvin Kamara? They have Latavius Murray as a backup. Is it worth it to maybe ship Kamara? And if they ship him, what is reasonable to get in return?
From an outsider's perspective looking in, I don't understand why the Saints would trade him. I feel like Alvin Kamara has been a steal. Running backs aren't really used that often as the way they used to be. And for him to be such a big part of their offense, because not only is he a great running back, he could also catch passes out of the backfield, and he's had major success with that. So I feel like he's a major part, and yeah, you may be able to replace him, but I don't think you're going to get the same level of production from another player as you do from him. So I feel like he's phenomenal. He fits in perfectly. I think that was more just to scare him away from wanting such a big contract, but realistically, I think he stays with the Saints. But I want to ask you a question. You being a Saints fan, this obviously affects you. I know when I was going through the Jamal Adams situation, I was hating Jamal Adams through it. Do you think Saints fans feel any way about him right now, or do you think they just want this to be over with?
I don't think they feel any kind of way. I don't think it's more of a they want this to be over with, because I feel like we're in the same situation that we were with Mike Thomas last year, when Mike Thomas wanted to get his deal done.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think it was very evident that Mike Thomas's deal was going to get done 100%. There was no question about a deal with the Saints and Mike Thomas being done. I don't think there should be a question between Alvin Kamara and the Saints getting a deal done. Mainly due to Alvin Kamara's first year in the league, he had a phenomenal first year. Absolutely phenomenal. Last year, I wouldn't necessarily say he struggled, but his production was not anywhere near it was his rookie year. Which, to some Saints fans, is their whole reason to be like, oh, he wasn't that good last year. It doesn't matter if we trade him. Latavius Murray had a pretty good year. We could find another backup to Latavius Murray. We can trade him for some defensive pieces or maybe a couple offensive linemen. I don't think that's the case. I think the Saints should sign Alvin Kamara to a long-term deal because he's extremely young. On top of that, we are but in the next couple years, Drew Brees is most likely going to retire. The Saints need some kind of big stability that they know they're going to have. They know they have Mike Thomas. They know they have Cam Jordan. Having Alvin Kamara is a big stability to have. And a running back is a huge part of an offense. Look how good Christian McCaffrey was last year. And for half the year, Cam Newton wasn't even the quarterback there. A running back is a huge part of the offense. As much as a receiver is big, they're a very good playmaker, but if you don't have a quarterback that can get it to a receiver, pretty much useless. Like Odell Beckham Jr., not putting anything on Baker Mayfield, because I think Baker Mayfield's a good quarterback, but the offense they were running did not help Odell Beckham Jr. because the ball was never thrown to him. The ball was barely thrown to him, and it was never put in a position for Odell to maybe go up and make a play. If you don't have that, it's very hard for a wide receiver to become involved in an offense, where a running back normally has short routes. Maybe they line up as a receiver, but they have slant routes. They have things like that, closer routes where they're getting the ball more consistently. And then they're also taking handoffs as well. A running back is a big part of an offense, and I think the Saints need to lock down Alvin Kamara. Regardless of his production last season, I think he still had a pretty good year. I don't think it was a terrible year at all. I think it was a pretty decent year. Obviously, it could have been way better. It wasn't as good as it it wasn't as good as his first year. His first year was phenomenal. Probably better than anyone even expected him. And I think he was coming out of college as one of the better running backs in that draft. And he still wasn't, his second year wasn't as good as his first year because I think his first year he blew expectations out of the water. So I feel the Saints need to tie him up. That is a deal that the Saints 100% need to get done. And apparently it's supposed to be a long-term deal. I don't know how long. With the way deals have been done this offseason, do we maybe see one of the bigger running back deals? Maybe for not as much money as like some of the other deals, but like Patrick Mahomes getting bank, both Travis Kelce and George Kittle getting a good deal. Do we see maybe a 5-year plus deal for Alvin Kamara? I think so.
I could I could see him getting a very similar deal to Joe Mixon. He just signed that 4-year, $48 million. I think I could definitely see
I feel
Alvin
like he'd
Kamara
probably
being
get
somewhere
more.
around there. I don't know if he'd get like a
I feel like
Ezekiel
he'd probably
Elliott.
get more. I wouldn't put Alvin. I see. The thing with Zeke is I think Zeke is a much more power running back that has speed. So he and regardless of the passing game, he's able to do a lot running. Where the Saints' passing offense is a lot to Mike Thomas on slant routes, which takes away Alvin Kamara's reps at maybe a wide receiver kind of position. Where I think that's where Christian McCaffrey thrives because I feel like Christian McCaffrey is as much as he is an elusive back, I also think he does have a bit of power running in him, and he's also a phenomenal receiver. If they line him up as a receiver pretty much. So he literally does everything on that offense. Anything you need him to do, he will do it. He's a power back. He's fast. He can catch the ball. He can line up as a receiver and go long. He can go short. He can do a lot of things. Where I feel Alvin Kamara is much more of just a straight elusive back. I don't think he's got much power to him. But the thing is, he's extremely fast and extremely hard to tackle, which is what makes him as good as he is.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's positives to both running backs. But when you're a Christian McCaffrey and you happen to have both, and you add a wide receiver trait in there, it's very hard to beat. Where I think Saquon Barkley is in the same conversation as Christian McCaffrey, and I think after those two, you have a bit of a drop off to like an Ezekiel Elliott, because I don't see Ezekiel Elliott much in the Cowboys passing game. Maybe it changes this year with a new coach and a new offense, but you have so many good receivers. You're not gonna line Ezekiel Elliott up as a receiver. You're gonna line him up as a running back, and you're gonna give him kind of that last option if Dak's under pressure. Kind of thing. He's going to go out for some passes, obviously, but he's not in the position that Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley are in, which is why I feel Alvin Kamara is closer to Ezekiel Elliott than Ezekiel Elliott is to Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, if that makes any sense. And look, that's a hot take. Now, on that hot take, what do you think? Do you think what I'm saying is completely false or opposite? Or should I say, do you agree or do you disagree?
I think if you compare Alvin Kamara to the other running backs that have gotten deals over the past few years, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry both got over $110 million in contract, and then Zeke is next. I think he's the third highest paid running back at $90 million. I don't think he deserves the money that they do because all three of those guys have proved that when it comes down to it, they are going to produce when their team needs it. Alvin Kamara, yes, he had that phenomenal breakout rookie season that we're talking about. He had a step back last year. Not saying that defines his entire career and his contract. I just can't see how the Saints could commit as much money as those franchises did to those three running backs, because they never had that big slump that Alvin Kamara had. Maybe he gets more than Joe Mixon, but I don't see him getting that high tier running back money and that's probably what the Saints and his agent are fighting about right now, which side of the sector he's gonna fall into.
I would agree with that. I definitely think he deserves more than Joe Mixon. I think he's a better running back. That I definitely do.
He's had a better team though.
Look who these other teams are paying. Besides Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, mainly looking at Zeke. The Cowboys are paying so many top players, and the fact they're just giving $90 million to Zeke. Not saying he doesn't deserve it. He's a very good running back. But I feel the Saints can throw out $60 million over 4 to 5 years for Alvin Kamara. I don't think that's unreasonable. I feel like that's a pretty good deal, especially because at the moment, in 2 to 3 years, the Saints don't really know who their quarterback is going to be. It might very well end up being Jameis Winston. Yeah. It might be Taysom Hill. It could even be Tommy Stevens, who we just drafted. If he turns out to be a stud and he turns out to be better than Taysom Hill, and we just basically swap those positions around as Taysom Hill being that second or third string quarterback, and Taysom Hill just basically taking a spot as the utility man. It really depends how.
Yeah.
I mean, they've drafted many utility men, as in Tommy Stevens, and you have Taysom Hill. So like maybe, or maybe next year they're not saying they're gonna tank, but maybe they try to go for a trade that they get a first round pick in, and they end up getting a quarterback, or they just deal with Jameis Winston, like they take Jameis Winston on. I feel like the Saints have a lot of options to kind of go with that, but I think Alvin Kamara does deserve his deal, and I think that deal will get done. Because I would still put Alvin Kamara as one of the top 10 running backs in the league. I wouldn't necessarily take him out of that conversation. Now, I'm not going to put him really towards the top half, to be honest with you. I feel like there's a good amount of running backs ahead of him, but he's definitely up there, 100%. Now, yeah.
My just one question though is, why does I don't know you can I don't think anyone can answer this except him. After having he signed for this year, and obviously because he's still under contract, which is why he hasn't been in camp and stuff. But after having that season, why wouldn't he, go play and hope that his numbers improve and just prove that he deserves a higher contract? Because what if he goes out and has a very similar season this season as he did his rookie year? Because then his value is going to go up from what it is right now, and he would probably get more money than he would if he would agree to a contract this year. That's the only thing I'm confused about, just because I feel like you should always get a contract after the best season you've had, and I could see why the Saints are hesitant after his poor season.
Probably.
Giving
and they
him
probably
that much
just
money.
want to see him pick it up a bit this year, and then I mean I feel like the deal is going to get done before the season goes. But
Yeah, has to.
I do agree, and I see the liability that the Saints also see. Because if this deal gets done and they give him that $60 million, just say, and he has the same years that the Saint, like another couple years how he had this year, that's a waste of $60 million. Yeah, so it's not up there for the Saints to do anything like that. But I do feel this deal is going to get done. For the Saints. It kind of has to get done in a way, but also to see consistency, the Boston Celtics have swept the first round of the playoffs. They are now up 1-0 on the Toronto Raptors. They're up 2. Yep, they're up 2-0 on the Toronto Raptors. Are the Celtics a serious NBA championship contender? And both of us speaking as people who kind of watch the Celtics and are more of a fan towards the Celtics. Are the Celtics a championship or an NBA championship contender?
I feel like going into the bubble, not that I really had my doubts, but they're such a young team. Like except Kemba Walker, who has been phenomenal as a leader for this team, but their best players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, those are all young players, and not that you don't have confidence in them, but going into the playoffs, you always expect those veteran players to, stand out a little bit more. So I feel, as a Celtics fan, we're going to the finals, we're winning. But I mean, the way they're playing right now is unmatched compared to any other team currently in the playoffs. I mean, they haven't lost a game, and you could say maybe they're not in the close series that the Utah Jazz and Denver Nuggets have been in, or the Thunder and the Rockets. But they're facing the Toronto Raptors, who, without Kawhi, people are still saying had a chance of winning the East. And I mean, Game 2 was close, but Game 1, the Celtics absolutely dominated the Toronto Raptors, and I don't see how, as an NBA fan, you could really deny that the Celtics aren't contenders. They look like they could easily take the East right now.
I think they can. I do think Giannis and the Bucks are still going to be an issue. I feel like the Raptors are the only other issue that they're going to have. But speaking on that, at this current moment, and I think the East, competition-wise, is not as good as the West. But I do not consider the Celtics an NBA contender, strictly due to the fact, as you alluded to, they are very young. Not that I don't think they're good enough, because I do think they have probably spread out around their team probably the most talent in the league. And I know what everyone's going to say. Oh, but the Lakers have LeBron and AD. That's 2 players. I'm talking about your entire team from top to bottom. I think the Celtics have probably the most talented team in the NBA, which is a reason they swept the first round and a reason why they're up 2-0 on the Toronto Raptors. The reason I do not consider them an NBA championship contender this year is because of the inconsistencies that they have. Yes, they're 6-0 in the playoffs at the moment. I applaud them for that. Do I think they're going to make the Eastern Conference Final? I do. Do I think they have a chance against the Bucks? I do. But no matter what, you're going at this current moment, if you make the championship, you are going up against two players that are absolutely in their prime that are going to be very, very difficult to beat. And I know it kind of sounds dumb saying that, oh, they got to the final, but they're not a championship contender. What does that even mean? I think they're good enough, but I just don't think they have the experience to take down LeBron and AD. And when LeBron and AD turn on, they turn on. I do think.
Yeah, but they haven't.
Okay, but they haven't. But the thing is, like, they've still been good enough to just dominate whoever they're playing. Like,
but they struggled against Portland in the first round.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
and you're gonna tell me Portland's is comparable to Boston?
On that, I just think that that Portland is a much harder team to guard due to the fact that all of their scoring comes from small guards, like small players, where the Lakers have absolutely no one to guard Damian Lillard. They have absolutely no one to guard CJ McCollum. Like, LeBron can, but the thing is, I would say Damian Lillard is probably faster off his first step and has that ability to maybe go like up different against LeBron. Now, you could argue the same thing with Kemba Walker, but I don't think Kemba Walker is as dynamic as Damian Lillard, which is the thing I have where I think LeBron can guard Tatum. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's going to shut him out because I think Tatum's a phenomenal scorer. Tatum's going to get his 15-plus points against the Lakers if they play. I think LeBron could guard Jaylen Brown. LeBron, if he wanted to, could guard Kemba. You have AD who can guard your 3 to 5 if you asked him to. But the thing is, like, on the other side of the ball, I mean, it's kind of been proven no one's going to be able to guard LeBron. It's very difficult to stop AD. If the two of them are putting up 60-plus points a game combined, they're extremely hard to stop. Now, in a year or two, when the Celtics, because I think the Celtics are still struggling or getting used to what they did this year, which is where I have my consistency issues, we're still struggling over going from Kyrie to Kemba, because Kemba's a much different point guard than Kyrie. Where I feel Kemba has the relationship with the Celtics that Jimmy Butler has with the Heat, which is why I think the Heat could also go on a run in the East. Now, the Heat are nowhere near as close to contenders as the Celtics. I think the Celtics do have a chance, but I wouldn't. If you're asking me about NBA contenders, I'm probably going to name you the first two teams are probably two teams from the West, and the Lakers and the Clippers.
I'm gonna put it out there. I don't think either team makes I don't think either of those teams make the.
You don't think either of them do? You think that the Nuggets and you think that the who's the other team?
It depends on who wins tonight between the Thunder and the Rockets.
100%. I see one of them making the Eastern Conference Final or the Western Conference Final.
I don't. They've looked terrible in the bubble. They've looked awful. LeBron in the playoffs is usually that guy who goes black on social media. You don't hear from him, and he's just dominating playoff game after playoff
it's a much
game.
Different kind of circumstances due to everything that's gone on politically. Like, I feel like
definitely
maybe that has an impact because I feel like his focus, and I feel like a lot of players' focus is somewhere other than basketball at the same time. I feel the Celtics are kind of locked in, which is I'm not saying they're not doing anything about the issue, but like I feel like they're more locked in than like LeBron is because I feel like the Lakers and the Clippers are the only two teams that voted to not continue playing, right?
Yeah.
So
But to be fair, also Jaylen Brown, if we're talking about the issue, he was actually the one that stood up to the Lakers and the Clippers at that meeting they had and said, let's be honest, you all know if you go home, you're not going to go out and protest. You're going to go home and sit with your families. And he even called out LeBron on it, which at least that's what was reported. Which I think that I think the bubble is definitely an excuse, but I don't know if the political thing could be an excuse for them because every player is dealing with it.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying I feel like some are focusing more on their social media aspect than they are or than they would normally. Because as you said, LeBron is very kind of goes black during the playoffs. He's so locked into the playoffs and he's not really focused on the social media aspects of anything. Where I feel all the players are very focused on the social media and political aspects at the moment.
Definitely.
So I do feel like that is a bit of I wouldn't say an inconvenience, but I feel like that's just kind of where they're at in terms of. It's not even like where they're at in terms of like doing bad because I feel like they're all still like. I feel like when it gets to a certain point, it's gonna be like lock-in mode. Like again, as I said, like I feel like the Blazers are one of the hardest teams to guard when healthy, because it's so hard to guard Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum that like you have to double team and it leaves an easy open shot for someone. And in the NBA, an open shot is like a guaranteed make, almost.
Yeah, but then I also feel like if we use the Celtics as an example, if you have, I agree with your point that you made before. Damian Lillard is definitely more dynamic.
Yeah, I don't mean that against Kemba.
Walker.
Like,
But Kemba Walker,
I just think he's so like.
No.
I would say that him again. He's probably the best scoring point guard in the league. I consider James Harden a shooting guard still because I think Russell is. But I would still take scoring wise, Damian Lillard over Russell Westbrook, who I think is probably the second best scoring point guard, or maybe Kyrie.
Yeah.
Because I think he also cares about his teammates and just like himself winning. But like his team winning involves him absolutely going off because he's just able to. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, what were you trying to say? I just wanted to.
But I agree that Lillard definitely more dynamic than Kemba. You have to worry about him much more on defense. But the fact about the Celtics, and you did bring this up, there's so many players on the Celtics that can go off at any point. I mean, we saw it last night with Marcus Smart. They were leaving him open because they were worried about Tatum, Brown, and Kemba Walker. And Marcus Smart goes and hits 5 3-pointers straight in the fourth quarter against the Raptors and gives the Celtics a huge lead when they were down 12. That's just something that you have to worry about. You could switch, like when you guard Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, you switch. You just constantly keep switching onto them. Well, at the Celtics, eventually you're gonna switch your best defender onto someone, but you're leaving somebody else that's a phenomenal scorer open with one of your worst defenders. That's where I feel like the Celtics have the advantage over a lot of teams. Is how their depth.
I will actually change my stance on it. Do I think the Celtics are a contender? Yes. Do I think the Celtics have this year or next year maybe have a good chance of winning? I'm gonna say no. I think the Celtics are probably one of the best teams and probably the hottest team in the NBA right now. But I just can't see any team fully overcoming the Lakers or fully overcoming the Clippers. Like, I think the Jazz are going to give the Lakers or the Clippers a run for their money. Like, 100%. Definitely. I think Jamal Murray is extremely difficult to stop. And then if you guard Jamal Murray, you have Jokic to worry about. Then you also have Michael Porter Jr. who's been popping off. I do think it is still extremely difficult to guard Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are not only offensive threats but defensive threats, which is the issue I have with why one of those teams is going to get into the Western Conference Final. And then again, you have, if the Rockets beat the Thunder, the Lakers, in my opinion, take that easy because the Rockets' tallest player is like 6'10". AD alone.
I think it might be shorter than that.
Literally, AD's. You ever seen the video of like Taco Fall just holding the ball up? That's what it's gonna be with AD. And then what are you gonna do? Double cover AD and leave like someone open to take a three? Like it's just not gonna happen the way I think they want. Like the way you said you don't think any of them get there. I think they do due to mismatches. Because I think also. It was the first round of the playoffs, so I can see both of these teams absolutely just popping off the next round. I mean, I understand it wasn't the best first round, but I just think that's kind of like where they're at. Like, I think they're both extremely good teams, but I do think they're both going to struggle into the or they're both going to get into the Western Conference Finals. And then I think the Bucks still need to pick it up. But again, once Giannis turns up, it's over. But yeah, as that continues, we will definitely going to report way more on the NBA playoffs because it's really starting to heat up now. We haven't talked much about hockey. We are definitely going to report on that as I believe that hockey is going into the semifinals of like the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference semifinals or finals. But we are definitely going to report more on that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see ya.